And I want to talk to you about how to get a solid phone number from a girl and how to set up a date and how to do it the right way. Okay, not only to get this phone number, but get a phone number that's not going to flake. Like I said, a phone number that's going to be solid here. You know what to text after you get the number. You know what to say after, how to set up the date, and how to proceed forward. So I got four different steps here, and I'm going to jump through these one by one for you so you could take more solid numbers. You could follow up and get more dates and convert these numbers that you get when you go out. So the first point that I'm going to talk about is the initial interaction. Now, this is the most important factor in all of this. This is going to be 90% or more of your results, you know, whether girls flake and meet up with you or not. 90% or more of this is going to be dependent on the initial interaction. Now, a lot of guys don't want to say that. You know, they want to say, "Oh, it's the text game is everything," and what you say over your text message and all. But at the end of the day, it really matters the initial interaction, how that went, and if that initial interaction. Now, we're not only that. Let's just say this. We're talking about how to get a phone number from someone in person. Okay, this isn't just swiping around on a dating app, because you're going to get a lot of flaky girls in there no matter what. But if this is, you met a girl somewhere in the real world, then the initial interaction is going to be the most important part. Okay? And how do you know if the initial interaction was solid or not? So one thing I'd love to say to guys is to get as much done initially as possible. Okay? You want to do most of your heavy lifting when you first meet the girl, okay? And then now we'll talk about your goals and what you want out of it later on, but you know, if you get a lot of work in and have a great initial interaction, then the texting is just, you know, the little salt bay on the top, little sprinkle of salt to get them to meet back up with you. And there's no way around a solid interaction. You have to stick to the fundamentals, okay? This isn't a fundamental video of how to have a solid interaction. I have that all over my YouTube channel. Great video I put out recently was, you know, how to continue a conversation and what to talk to girls about. You can see that right on my channel. And I give you some great tips on there to have a solid interaction. So you can watch that in the other video. But you want to make sure that you stick to those tips. You can also grab my flirting guide off my site, and I teach you how to break out of a boring conversation and have a solid interaction. Okay, so I have a lot of tools for that. But basically, it's sharing information about yourself, finding out information about her, you know, flirting, having good emotions, and having a fun and interesting interaction. That's going to be a solid interaction. Now, questions that I'll ask to determine how solid the interaction is. Okay, so if a student comes to me and says, "Hey, look, I met this girl, I got her number, and she flaked, and she didn't respond to the text message the next day. What did I do wrong?" So the first thing I say is, "What did you get done initially?" Okay, well, here's the questions that I ask. I'm going to add them right here. The first question I asked was, "How long did you talk to her for initially?" Okay. The next question I ask, which is my most favorite one to ask here, is, "How much do you remember about her?" Okay. And the point of this is how much did she invest? You know, if a girl met you and didn't really tell any information about herself, and she didn't spend as much time with you either, then it's not going to be surprising that the phone number isn't really that solid. So this is all very important, the initial interaction. That's why I'm talking about this first before we get into the tactics and techniques of all the other stuff. And this is definitely my favorite question, because a lot of guys will say, "Okay, well, I talked to her, and yeah, she lives here in town, and maybe they remember her job, but they don't remember anything else." So the girl didn't really share much about herself. If a girl spends some time with you, shares information about you, about herself, then you know, she's more likely to return your text messages the next day. Okay, and then there's all different types of investment and things you can get, but that's going to be the most important there. Now that being said, I've definitely gotten phone numbers in minutes. Okay, that wound up turning out to be pretty good. But that's, as you get more advanced and you get better at this stuff, you'll be able to build more of a connection faster. And sometimes it's just on right away. So that can happen. But overall, in general, you want to have a solid, fundamentally solid interaction. Get as much done as possible. You want to need the number should. You want to be so invested and things went so well that you text her and be like, hey, it's Joe, we met yesterday. We still on for tonight? And she'll be like, yes. I mean, you could even set the date up initially. You want to do as least work over text as possible. So that being said, that's going to be the most important part. But now that I said that, that's out of the way. Let's talk about how to actually get the number. That's where a lot of guys mess this up, but it can be very simple. The first note, well, with any type of escalation, but definitely with getting numbers, you want to get it on a high point. By high point, I mean you have the interaction with the girl. She tells you some information. Maybe you guys found a commonality. She laughs. You give her a hug, whatever. When things are going well, you want to grab the number at that point. Okay, this is something I learned from an instructor who taught me years ago. You can get a number within the first few minutes in an interaction. It doesn't have to be at the end of the interaction. Now you may think I'm contradicting what I said before. How long was it? Now, what I'm going to say here is that you can get this number on a high point early, but you don't want to walk away after you get the number. Okay, so you could have a 20-minute interaction, and you could have got the phone number 5 minutes in. These questions are for the entire interaction when you look back on it. Okay, just want to make sure that I got that. You can get the phone number within 5, 10, 15, 20, whatever it may be, any point, but it just has to be on a high point when things are going well. Now, what I like to do is message her on the spot, and no need to store her number first. So let me talk quickly about my method on how I do it. So I'm talking to a girl, say, things are going well. She says something. I say, you got a good sense of humor. I like that. I'll throw a compliment, and then say, I'll say right there, let me take your number down. I'll pull open my phone, and then I'll open the messages, and then I will start a new text message. I'll go to the part where her number is, and I'll hand her the phone with the keypad on the numbers and have her type her number into the top of the text message. Okay? Maybe I could show you a little diagram of this over the top of the screen here. I'll have her type her number on the top of the messages, and then I'll text myself. I'll text her from my phone, and I'll say, what was your name again if I forgot it? So I'll say, hey Megan, it's Joe. And then I'll send her the message right there. So now we have a text message thread started. I don't store it in my phone. I've had times where I've got girls' numbers stored in my phone, and when I go to text them the next day, I forgot who they were. And I forgot to even find them, or how to find the number even on my phone. So I like to send the text message right on the spot. And, I don't, sometimes these numbers flake and they don't turn into anything. So I don't want to store a zillion numbers in my phone either. So I like to just start the text message thread going on. You could even text her later that night, whatever it may be. So that's the best way that I've found to get numbers. It works really, really well. You assume the sale. You don't necessarily even ask for it. You just say, hey, let me take your number down. Shoot her a text message right there on the spot. I don't get fake numbers anymore because I'm texting them right there. So they can't even give you a fake number. So that is going to be the best way to get it that I've found from all my research. That works super awesome. Now, once you have the number there, it comes to the next part, which is the follow-up. So like I mentioned before, you want to start texting the night of. You could even, I remember one of the guys who taught me had a really fun strategy where he started texting her while he was talking to her. So he's talking to the girl, they're having an interaction, and he would send like some text, funny text to her, like what was the old stuff they used to say, like, oh, hey, I'm talking to this cute girl, and and I want to tell her I like her, but I don't know what to say to her, or what should I say, or something like that. And then he would text her on the spot. I don't do that anymore, but it just goes to show that you want to get those text message threads going the night of. Even if you go to another venue, you can ask her how her night's going, if you're staying out of trouble, what the other venues are like, all that other stuff. You can get the text message going. I like to get going right away. Forget waiting a few days and all that other stuff. And depending on what your goal is, if you don't want to meet up with her that night, you want to meet her up for a date or something like that, you could follow up the next day. The next day is the latest I'd follow up. I wouldn't wait 2 days, 3 days, nothing like that. Follow up the next day with something called callback humor. If you could mention something that you had talked about the night before, it would be really funny. It's hard for me to think of an example off the top of my head, but say you guys talked about your favorite taco place or something like that. So your favorite place to eat, and you could say, "Hey, I drove by this place today, and they said they were out of tacos. Was it did you put them out of business today or something like that, right? So a little callback humor to something you had chatted about the day before works really well. I used to have a funny little picture I sent that said, "I remember almost everything we talked about last night." It was an e-card. I don't really send e-cards much anymore, but that one was really funny. But something a little humorous with good emotions, just to get the thread going the next day. And it's a real important rule to remember that texting is just a solid interaction over text, but with a specific goal in mind. Okay, so back to what I mentioned over here is the solid interaction with the fundamentals. Getting a little bit about you, getting to know her, a little flirting, a little back and forth. This is all the same stuff you use in person. So it's an extension of your normal game and whatever you want to call it. Your normal interaction that you'd be having with girls anyway. But you're going to have a specific goal in mind with this texting, okay? And that leads us to the next point, which is very important, which is the goal, right? What is your goal exactly? Why do you want the number? What do you want to do with it, okay? So now recently, I'm having parties and barbecues over at my house, so I may take a girl's number down to invite her to. I went to a networking event recently, 2 weeks ago, got a girl's Facebook. We messaged, took her number down, and I wanted to invite her to the party because she was cool and fun and good company. And I didn't want to take her on a date or go to dinner. Nothing, if you want to do that, that's up to you. But I wanted to bring her to the party. And she came and brought her friends, and we had a great time. So for me, there was not a ton of there was barely follow-up. Was just a little bit of humor about something we met the first time, a little bit of back and forth. I waited a couple of days because I didn't know when I was going to have the next party. And then when I found out I was having a party, then I literally just messaged her, say, "Hey, what are you up to on Sunday? I'm having a barbecue. Why don't you come by?" And then that was it. With the goal in mind, I put her at this decision, which is the next point. So, if you want to go on a date with the girl and meet up with her, let's pull this part up. You by putting her at a decision, I mean, you don't want to get stuck texting this girl and going back and forth and blowing her up and this and that. As soon as sometimes the next day, I may get like 4 or 5 back and forths and be like, "Hey," and put her at the decision to get together. And how I do it is I'll say something like, "Hey, let's get together this week, tomorrow, or let's get together in the next few days. Whatever you want to fill in here for when you're free. Let's get together, blah, blah, blah. What's your schedule look like?" And by asking her what her schedule looks like, now she has to give you a time that she's free. So you can't say, "Oh, let's get together Tuesday," because you could say, "No, I'm busy Tuesday." When you ask what her schedule looks like, that's how you're going to gauge how into you she really is, right? A lot of times, I hate to admit this, but you'll put her at this decision to get together, and you'll send her this message, and she won't respond at all. So that's a clear indication she's not interested. That's the worst response. The second worst response you'll get is, "Oh, I'm really busy this week. I barely have any free time." That's the second worst response. If that's the case, then you want to give her some space, and then maybe go back into having a little more solid texting. Send her some funny GIFs or check in with her a few days later. Have a little more back and forth before you ask her out again. But if you're getting those two responses, to be honest with you, if you're getting a no response or you're getting my schedule's really busy, then that's where I'd go back and say, "Man, you messed up that initial interaction." It's really hard to revive some of these numbers if you didn't get a solid number in the first place. But you ask this question, and then you want to pick a date or meetup that is conducive to your goals. Like I said, I invited girls to the barbecue or the house party. You could do that if that's one of your goals. If you're going out on the weekend, you want her to meet you at the bar, you could. I've done that before. If you want to go for a hike with the girl or go to the gym, I've done that before. If you want to go on a dinner date, I'm not a big dinner date fan. I don't think I've ever done it with a girl before I've wound up getting physical with her. But if that's something that you're interested in, you're a foodie or something like that, then maybe that's the date you want to go for, or whatever is good by you. Maybe you want to just grab some drinks and go for a drink, and then maybe you want to go back to your place or something like that. Whatever your goals are, you need to pick and know exactly what your goal is so you know what to invite her to. So the point of this is, the point of this video was to give you an example of having a good interaction, what I do to get the number, how I follow up, and how I really put her at the decision to get her out. This was not a video where I say, okay, here's different, super awesome texts that are going to win every girl and flip her like a pancake. No, this is the more important parts. Whenever someone asks me for texting advice, or how do I text this girl, this, that, I always go to these foundations. I'm like, how was your interaction? How did you meet her? How much did you get accomplished originally? When did you get her number? How'd you get her number? From there, I care actually the least about the follow-up, because if you know what you're saying, you know what you're doing, you could pretty much say anything. You have a little back and forth. But I want to know, are you putting her at a decision to get together? And the point of this really is, nowadays you'll get a lot of time wasting, and people will just talk to you forever over text and whatever, stuff like that. So you want to do your heavy lifting up front, get that number, follow up with it, sure, but put her at a decision to get together and meet up with her again. Because don't ever forget, the overall goal is to see her again in the real world. We want the real world here, we want the real world there, and we want just the phone number just to be a bridge that brings these two together. Never forget that, okay? And then I actually have some other notes here on big texting mistakes, but I'm gonna make a whole nother video about that, because this already had a lot of information and a lot of value out of it. And if you have any questions, you can always screenshot this if you want to save it. If you have any questions for me about texting and getting the number, feel free to comment below and ask me. But like I said before, this is the meat and potatoes, a solid initial interaction. Get the number on a high point. Follow up, get the text message thread going. I like to get it going the night of. Use that momentum. If you're waiting too long on these numbers, they're going to die out. Use that momentum, put her at a decision. I want you guys to waste as little time as possible on girls that are not interested in you or making things difficult. And I want you to get solid numbers that turn into seeing them and bridging the gap to getting together with them in real life.